welcome back, welcome to the Nap and Knit podcast. My name is Sarah, and we're back to film another one. Today is the last day of February, so it's the 28th. And I figured I would film like an end of February, start of March podcast, similarly to how I did last month. I meant to kind of film one in the middle, but life is chaotic and I just didn't also have a lot to show, and I don't know, it just seemed kind of silly, so we're doing one now. I don't know if I'll post it today, the 28th, or if it'll be more of a start of March thing, but either way it's gonna be like a recap on the month, a look forward, so it'll be pretty relevant either way. If you've watched any of my podcasts so far, you would know that I'm not normally here. It looks like I'm outside, and I'm like half outside. We have a little sunroom that has the walls of windows. I don't like a sunroom, a normal sunroom. I don't know why I'm making it weird. But it was an add-on to our house at some point. So this was the original house, but then they just built the sunroom. So that window is to the master bathroom, and that window is to our bedroom. But it's just what we're working with in here. It's a pretty nice day outside, so I figured I would film outside. It's actually not that nice. I want it to be nicer than it is, so I'm acting like it is. It's 30 something degrees, but the sun's out and it's a lot warmer than it's been, so I figured I would just suck it up and sit outside for the nice lighting. Not perfect lighting, but better than my basement where I usually film. And the fresh air, because I feel like that's good. I have a tendency, I think, and this probably really bothers my husband, to just fill a space that I'm in. I just will do things, and I have a lot of hobbies, so completely off topic, but one hobby I got into a while ago, and this had a purpose. So when I got married, I made my own flowers. We did a small elopement, and I made my bouquet. But I had painted a bunch of wood flowers, and I have a bunch of them in here. So it's also just a little bit of chaos. We're working with a small mess here because this table that I'm filming on is covered in wood flowers. I brought all the knitting things that I can think of that I wanted to talk about with me. But if you could see behind me, there's just a huge box of wood flowers that are unpainted. There's a kind of weird spinning wheel situation that I don't think really works very well because I haven't really been able to use it. But I got it at a work yarn swap thing. So there's a lot of random junk in here. My dog is also in here, but he's just happily looking out the window, so I'm not gonna bother him. But maybe he'll pop up later. Okay. So I think that was a lot for an intro that I didn't really need to say and isn't really relevant to anything, but whatever. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy. I have a lot of things to talk about today. I actually don't have that many finished objects or things, but I've got a lot of random side tangents and thoughts and some sort of acquisitions or yarn dyeing or spinning. So I will mention what I will be talking about before I talk about it, so that if it sounds terribly boring to you, you can skip forward a few minutes and not have to see it. But what we'll start with is what I'm wearing. So, well, we'll start with the outer piece because I was gonna do film just in this top, and then it was just a little too cold. I also wish I was wearing warmer socks right now because I'm just wearing socks from Costco, but maybe I'll put some on later. So this is my In Good Company wrap. It's a pattern by Espace Tricot. I think it's a free pattern, and it's one of those things that I wanted to make as soon as I saw it and just was waiting for the perfect yarn. And at some point I got this Madeline Tosh yarn. There's mohair, which is called Impression, and I don't know the colors of each of these, but I know they're on my project page, so I'll link that. And then there's the Tosh Merino Light, which is just a single ply merino. And the Tosh Merino Light came in this lovely, I think it's called Horn is the color of the Tosh Merino Light. It came in this like really lovely speckle that just I think is so beautiful how it works up, and like the mohair kind of like tones it down so it's not too intense. But I'll just come in a little closer. You can see it's got some really lovely patterning. You can see some of the colors in there. This is like one of my favorite things I own. It's so warm and cozy. It's just like a little wrap yourself up situation, and I just think it like looks really classic because the color is very neutral and just nice. I think it's one of those things that I just will be wearing the rest of my life, and I love that. So that's the first thing I'm wearing. I've had this done for a long time, so it's nothing new. And I'll also mention what I'm drinking. I don't think they're gonna be able to see this really well because of the sunlight, and I don't know how to fix that, but here's my little mug. I just have some instant coffee. I think the brand is like Old Town or something. I tried it for the first time when we were visiting my husband's family in Houston, and I was like, I like that. It's got like sweetener and stuff in it already, and I'm a sweet coffee girly, so it's very good. The other thing I'm wearing, I'll back up just a little, is my Navelli by Caitlin Hunter. You can see here. I'll walk closer a little bit so you can see there's some really good colors going on in here in this like light white gray section. It's got some like very beautiful speckles. And if you want the floats, look at those floats. I am proud of this one. This one's a really good one for me. For some details on this, because I can give them to you, this is the Navelli by Caitlin Hunter. This is Madeline, Tosh, TML, and Tweed, and I have to be so honest, I have no idea if these are still things that Madeline Tosh sells. I got these like 5 years ago when it was their like big kind of like what everybody thought was a going out of business sale, but then it wasn't really. I don't know. So this was part of that, so I don't know if they still sell that. And this is all this yarn is from that. So the two colors on the bottom, the dark gray, I believe is called Dead Calm. And technically it's got like some browns and greens a little bit in it, but it's largely gray. And then this other one is Grace Notes, which I just think is like the best color ever because I love a pop of speckle. So I used all of those to make this. I made it in a size 4, and it is pretty much perfect for me. The one thing that I don't remember is if this had like short row shaping or not, because when I hold it up, there's like a lot of times I don't know what the back or front of my sweater is, but if I hold it up, you can kind of naturally see, or if there's color work or something, you can like identify the point where it starts and assume that's the back. I have no idea with this sweater. I don't know if there's a front or a back. I just put it on. It looks relatively similar either way, so whatever. But yeah, so that is what I'm wearing today. And yeah. Okay, so now I will move on to finished objects. I didn't finish all that much last month, honestly. And I've got a little book down here, so if I'm looking down, that's why. But I have been trying to use Stash and work from Stash and just work from things that I have quite a bit. So I've got numbers and tallies to share as well. And one of these is going to be a little bit of a cheat, but you'll see. So, oh gosh, this is a mess. The first thing I will show you is going to be these socks. This is Knit Picks Felici in the color Game Over. These socks have no pattern whatsoever. I just knit. I started at the same point. Like I started at the color change of the orange into the blue, and I did a German twisted cast on. So same thing for both of them with 56 stitches. You can see I kind of knit 2 stripes of one color because one seemed just like way too short for a ribbing. So I did 2. And then I did, I think, a Fish Lips Kiss heel. So I guess technically pattern, but that's a pretty standard short row heel with the pattern on Ravelry. And then I just knit the rest of the foot in pretty standard wedge toe decreases. So I made these, they fit me, but I might give them away. I don't really know what to do with them yet. I was just kind of craving sort of a simple sock pattern and to use up some of my Felici. With previous Felici socks, like I normally knit a 60 stitch sock for myself, but they just seem to stretch and be bigger than my other socks, so that's why I did 56, and these fit like perfectly. So I think that like going down a size is probably more appropriate for Felici. I am pretty impressed with how well they match up, because they really are just like, I mean, I guess that makes sense, but they are quite even. So I'm very happy with those, and that's my first finished object. These together were 44 grams of yarn. So I technically could have gotten these, in theory, out of one ball of Felici. I bought two, so I've still got sort of one and a little bit left, so I could probably make another pair. But that feels bananas, because this just feels like a lot of sock. Like it's not insignificant how much there's leg there. Like it's not just like an ankle sock. So I don't know, 44 grams, and I've got these little cuties. The next thing I finished is actually not with me, so I'm gonna pause real quick and go get it. Okay, I'm back. The next thing, and I'm trying to go in order, and that's why I went to go get it, because I'll have something else after this too. Is a pattern I made myself. This is my bee cowl. That's what I'm just calling it for lack of a better name. Be beautiful. Ew. It's just a simple colorwork cowl pattern. I use the ladder back jacquard technique on this, which is a way of carrying long floats without catching them. It's just a different way of catching them where you sort of make an additional stitch. I wonder if I can show you. That sits on the inside, and then you knit into that stitch. It's gonna be impossible to see, but you knit into that stitch. So it looks a lot different than catching floats, because there's basically a stitch column right here that you knit into, and it hangs out on the inside. So you can't see it, I think, at all on this side, which I love, and is often a problem for me when I am catching long floats on other things, is that you can see it peek through just a little, and that always kind of bothers me. So I haven't blocked this. I probably should. I've worn it a bunch of times though. It's made in drops Lima, in black and goldenrod, I believe, and it used 66 grams of the goldenrod and 40 grams of the black, so one in some and less than one ball. I'll just put it on really quick. So as you can see, it's pretty tight. Like it's not, you know, it stays up on my face, and I think that's my favorite thing about it. I actually just realized I don't know if you'll be able to hear me at all if I'm wearing it like that. It stays up on my face really well, which is a problem that I have with a lot of cowls, is that they fall down, and that is really hard, I think, when you're walking your dog or something like that, and your cowl just keeps slipping down your face, and it's, sorry, I've got fluff. Very bothersome to just have to keep adjusting it and fix it. So I have some other cowls that I love, and I figured I'd show one of these as an example. This is my The Snuggle is Real cowl by Max the Knitter, I believe. I made this a long time ago. It's got this like hot pink mohair lining, and it's great, but I find it always slips, and I also, like, it's got these ties so I can cinch it, but mine just never stays. Like, it just gets kind of weird and clunky. And the other thing is, like, I think I've realized a mohair lining is not for me, because I just am constantly pulling mohair out of my mouth, and then if it gets kind of like humid, like breathing, you know, because you're cold, you're breathing, the breath is hot, the water condensates on the mohair, and then you've got like wet mohair in your mouth. So I love this, and I like wear it like this, but it's not I think as good for my really cold winter days where I really want to just like have something that's going to be there and stay there and not worry about it. So that's my second finished object. I really love her. Like, I think that if I were to do it again, there might be some things I would change. I think this would actually be really cool, reversible. So if you could also have like the black background with the yellow bees, so like maybe double knitting it for that really warm fabric, but making it like an infinity scarf type thing, so much longer, I think could be really cool. So that's something I'm noodling on, but don't have any plans to actually attempt anytime soon. But yeah, might be Kel. I haven't written anything up for this. If you would be intrigued, let me know, but it just was sort of like an idea I've had and wanted to do, and I did it. So that is finished object number 2. And then the final one is definitely the most complex one. Okay, we're gonna say final one, but we're kind of gonna call it final 2, and you'll see why. So my final one is, technically the ends aren't completely sewn in, but we're still considering it a finished object because it's chaos. I participate in this sock knitting competition every year called Sock Madness. And I think this is the 17th year. I think it's Sock Madness 17. And the gist of this is there's a qualifying round that lasts 2 weeks. You're given a pair of socks to knit. And you have to follow the instructions like pretty exactly, so you can't make many modifications, which is a frustration to a lot of people because they might know that they want a shorter toe or things like that, but there's like a minimum you have to knit. So you have to knit to the required length, and you can knit longer if you want, because sure, you're making your socks, you're taking longer, but you can't knit shorter. So what that means is Sock Madness socks are almost always too big for me, so my husband pretty much always gets them. And I think that is also the case with this pair, which is kind of depressing because they're the craziest socks I've ever made, I think. I've never done intarsia before. I did intarsia in these socks, and they're not perfect, but they did qualify me. And so just like after you qualify, you essentially get placed on a team, and then as you're on your team, they will release new socks at some random time, and you basically want to finish, if there's say 40 people on your team, you want to finish in the top 35, and then you move on to the next sock. So it goes on for a bunch of rounds because they just narrow down some people each round. But even if you don't like finish, you know, like even if I'm in that 5 of the 40 that don't finish, I still will get the sock patterns and things at the end, which is really cool because a lot of times there's some really unique and interesting socks, and I find I've always learned something new. Sock Madness was my first ever pair of colorwork socks. It was my first ever beading of anything. Beading, like with a D, not beating, like, that was probably obvious. It was my first Latvian braid, and only Latvian braid, but a lot of different things like that. So this was my first intarsia. It was also intarsia in the round, which is sort of a unique beast. And here they are. So here's the sock. You can see, I'm gonna put it on my arm so you can maybe see the design a little better. They're so long. This is weird. It's just a girl and she's holding a bunch of balloons. So yeah. I'll be honest, I've sewn in most of my ends, which was a chore, but I haven't sewn in these ends yet because I haven't figured out the best way to kind of like make the strings the way I want them to, but for the purposes of qualification, this was enough, thankfully. So let me turn them inside out so you can see my intarsia balloons and my not woven in ends. And actually, before I do that, let me show you the other one. I did them both, but I did the balloons in different colors just because I feel like that's I don't know, it just felt more fun that way to do them in slightly different colors. There's no good way for me to show you these socks. So you can see it's definitely a little bit messy, but we're fine with it. Let me flip it inside out so you can see my intarsia. Is it called intarsia or is it intarsia? I don't know. I'm gonna call it intarsia. So sorry if that's wrong. There's my ends woven in, but you can see like all of these are intarsia, and I mean, just one row across, you can see there's like, sometimes you're working as many as like 6 colors at a time, so probably more than 6. You can see the girl too, she's all intarsia as well. These were really fun to knit, if not somewhat chaotic, but I do love that I always learn something new when I'm doing this competition. In addition to the intarsia, which I had never done this type of cuff. I just always do like a 2x2 ribbed cuff or whatever maybe a pattern calls for, but usually it's ribbed, and this was like a it's a double layered cuff, and you can see there's like a row of pearl bumps at the top, so I like that too. I think it looks very neat and cute, so I feel like I might use that on future socks if I'm doing sort of like something a little bit more plain. But yeah, this is my third finished object. Yarn wise, I can tell you this blue I dyed myself, so it's just like a classic 75/25 that I bought when I was like having a moment a while ago and really wanted hand-dyed yarn by me. So I bought a bunch and we'll talk more about that later. And then the black is Lang, L-A-N-G, jawoll, J-A-W-O-L-L, and just black. Those are fun because they come with a little bobbin inside, and if you don't know that, I've just ruined the surprise for you because I was fascinated when I was trying to figure out what was inside my yarn. But yeah, these are little cuties. A lot of times the sock patterns that they use for Sock Madness do go on sale when Sock Madness ends, so if there's something you really like that you see, you can usually buy it afterwards. But overall, like, that competition is something that I found to be very fun and interesting every year. Sometimes it's hard to qualify or to keep going. Last year I qualified and then I knit the first sock, I think, and then the second sock I just like messed up and I had it slightly off to the side and I thought I was going to get the very last spot and I just missed it because, well, I didn't just miss it. I finished my sock and I was like, oh my god, it's crooked, like it's wrong. And that was heartbreaking. I realized that on the day of the Super Bowl, I think, there was a bunch of people at our house and I was like, so yeah. So my other finished object, which is not actually a finished object, but it will be today. I just wanted to film while the light was good. Is my very, very modified Campfire Cozy, and I wish I had done some of the bind off so you could see it better, but whatever. Oh, she's big. You can see that I was working with a variety of dye lots here. I can't point because I'm holding it, but you can just tell that the color shifts in some locations. I might try to over dye it, or I might just live with it, but it's huge. So I had 600 grams, so 6 skeins of Madeline Tosh worsted in the color Tart that I got again from that sale they had a long time ago. And I have created matter, I think, because I weighed this yesterday and it was like over 700 grams. And now I didn't weigh the 100 gram skeins when I got them, but it feels like it would be crazy if those 600 grams were actually like 700. But either way, something is weird, and this guy is really big and heavy. But besides all this, it's certainly not enough yarn. So you can see there's like this it starts, okay, here, let's do this. This is like where it starts, and it's garter for a while. Then you get this really lovely sort of like lace motif, which I'm obsessed with. And you go back into garter. Now here, this is supposed to be way longer. I lost my patience. It was like too much to think about. Knitting with big needles sometimes makes my hands hurt, and this yarn is a single ply, so it was like kind of a bit of a pain. I think it was like sometimes a little splitty. Or I would just shove my yarn through it just violently by mistake. Sorry, I have hair on my mouth. It's a dog hair. So I ended this earlier than intended, and I switched to garter. And then the garter was so mindless and so wonderful, and it would work up so quick because I would do one row and it would be like 5 grams of yarn. That I did the garter for a long time. I probably shouldn't have done the garter for this long because at this point I had just kind of abandoned the pattern. And what's supposed to happen is that you do a little bit of stockinette, and then you have a really lovely like ribbed border. The situation we are in is that I have this much yarn left, and I'm supposed to do like 12 rows of a ribbed border. It is not happening. And I don't want to rip back because I've honestly just had this thing on the needles a long time and I want it off. So we're just accepting the fact that it is not what it is intended to be and working with it. So as you can see, I have my garter, my stockinette. I started doing another row of garter so that basically I'm setting it up so that it won't curl. And I think that I can maybe do one more row and a bind off, but I might just bind off. And then it'll be done. So I haven't picked a bind off yet. I'm thinking I might do Icelandic just to keep it simple. I contemplated, do I want to do like a picot bind off, give it little nubbins? And I was like, no, you don't. Like, why would you choose to, no. Like, and also I'm never gonna block this out to have little perfect picot. So I think I'll just do an Icelandic bind off, keep it nice and simple, but match up with the like little garter ridge. It shouldn't curl, and I will just have this really big cozy guy. I feel like I cannot represent its size. Like, I don't even know how big it is because it's impossible to tell because it's just so bunched up. So this was inspired by the Campfire Cozy by Espace Tricot, but it is really just half the pattern and then whatever I want it to be, which is fine. I'm really excited to finish that one, and I'm calling it a finished object because once I finish this, I am gonna go and I'm gonna do the bind off, and I'm not gonna stop until I'm done the bind off. But I can finish the bind off today unless something like drastically terrible happens and I can't knit. I will be finishing that bind off today, and that will be really wonderful, and it will be done. So that is my finished objects, and I feel like maybe this kind of feels like as good of a time as any to summarize like end of month total, since I just finished talking about finished objects, and then I'll just jump into all the other random things. So I'm gonna do that now. I think that's a different order than I did it last time, but there's no structure to this. I just do what I want, and if you're here, thank you, and I'm sorry. So February is a weird month, but my overall totals, like the big things I worked on are the things that I showed. I did work a little bit on a different sock and my half and half triangles wrap, but I didn't finish either of them, so they aren't going to go into my used total. So overall, between the socks, the cowl, the other socks, the Sock Madness socks with the girl in the balloon, and then the just classic Knit Picks Felici socks, and then this wrap, we have used up 838 grams of yarn total, and that all comes to about 1,282 yards of yarn total. And if I compare that to last month I did acquire a bunch of yarn, but my total amounts were 711 grams and 1310 yards. So I'm kind of on par, but last month I also like finished up a ton of stuff that was like really, really close to being done. And this month it was more kind of like newer things. So, you know, I didn't acquire any yarn this month. I was sorely tempted many times. I almost bought some stuff from Woolly Knits just because I was looking at like their nylon sock base and I was like, wow, I like love having sock yarn. And then I said, no, you do not need it. So I didn't buy any more yarn there. So total 838 grams used, 1,282 yards used approximately. Yeah, so that's very exciting. Moving on, we will talk about works in progress. Works in progress. I've got a few, I think, major things to show here. It's just all on my floor. Like, I've just taken everything I own and just dumped it on the floor. And I will have to take it out of here because it's just chaos. I guess the first work in progress that I can talk about is another big shawl, because that's where we're at. I've shown this before, my half and half triangles wrap by Purl Soho. I made some decent progress on this, but then the other shawl kind of took over, so I haven't worked on it recently. But I think the last time I recorded, you can see this white stitch marker up here. That's where I was. So if you like kind of follow that line down, this is impossible. Just follow that line down and see where it intersects with the green, and that is sort of like the amount that I've knit. So it's a decent chunk, and I've got not that much more left, but obviously these rows get longer and longer as you go up, so they take a little bit longer each time. But either way, I think I'm going to be able to finish this one fairly soon. And just to reiterate, Purl Soho linen quill, this is Juniper green and this is Twig brown, I believe. They're super soft and very warm, and maybe I should just hang out under here. I should just cover myself in my shoulder projects. So that's one work in progress. Another work in progress that I'll just show briefly. It's a little bit of a stretch to call this a work in progress. I was clearing off my sock needles for Sock Madness. I had this magic heel sock, and I have knit up to where I started the toe on the previous one, but I've lost the first sock. Like, it's gotta be somewhere. I know I finished it, but I have no idea where it is. So it's a little bit on hold until I can finish the toe, which means I have to find the first sock. But also Annette picks Felici in the color Red Rocks. This will be a quick finish whenever I do find the other sock, because it's literally just a toe. I just have it on little stitch holders for the time being. I think I've got 2 more works in progress. Well, we'll call it 3. I've just got one random pair of socks. Nothing too special to say about these. This yarn that I'm using for the cuff is the jawoll. It's like a shiny yarn that I got from a local yarn store that has since closed. Oh no, my stitches fell off. I don't like these needles. Like, I have a bunch of the Chiago shorties, and I love those, and that's what I typically use. But I bought these when I lost a pair because they were much cheaper, but the tips are so blunt, and the like thing where they meet, it sometimes catches and it really bothers me. But anyways, I have these socks. They're just kind of like my shove in my bag and work on when I'm like going to the dentist or doing an errand, or I don't know, whatever it might be, sock, because they fit really nicely in my purse. So that is technically a work in progress, but I don't really know what I'm going to do with them. I feel like I might just knit a tube and then figure out other things later, but also I know if I do that, I'll probably never figure other things out. So we'll see. And then the final 2 one of them is my halibut sweater by Caitlin Hunter, same person that designed this top. I haven't worked on this a lot. I think when I last showed it, if I last showed it, I was like right around the start of the tail. So we're making more progress. We've got, you know, mostly the tail done. I do kind of want to get the fish done so that I can just have some mindless stockinette knitting for a car ride for a trip I'll be going on soon. More on that later. But made some good progress on that. This feels quite warm, but this kind of gets at what I was talking about earlier with how sometimes when you catch your floats you can see them. That's an example. I caught my floats in there and you can just see it just a little bit. And I think that like when I block this, the yarn might bloom a little bit and it won't be as obvious, and especially because it's the dark color on the outside, it kind of masks the white showing through. But let's see my floats. This is what I'm very excited for. It's just I need to pay attention to work on it since it's obviously like a color work chart, so sometimes it does not get my brain power. And then finally, speaking of paying attention to things, one other project I'm working on is the Hannah sweater by Yunko Okamoto, I believe. I will put links for everything. But it's basically like a seamed sweater, so it's got a front panel, a back panel, and then sleeves. You seam them all together, and then they have this really cool technique where at the seams you apply embroidery floss in a contrasting color, so it kind of like makes them pop out in a really nice way. And I had the front and the back panel done, but I've just been putting off working on the sleeves. So I decided to pick those up. Here's the front or the back. They're the same, so it doesn't really matter, but it's just like a series of unique cable designs, and I think it's just really cute and fun. I think I love the Ingrid sweater, the Moby sweater. I think they're very fun, but I think this is like a unique spin on them because it's got a very different character. It feels more playful, and I really like that, so. A lot going on here. So I've started both of my sleeves, you can see here. I actually just decided the best way I'm going to finish them is if I work them both at the same time. So I have both sleeves on one needle and I'm just working back and forth as I go. So this is another project that was sitting for a really long time, but I'm hoping I can really push myself to finish. It is another attention paying project because even the sleeves have these cables. A lot of the motifs are like repeated, which I think is really cool too because it kind of ties it together. But that yarn is Cloudborn Worsted Special Edition or something like that. It's a pretty thick wool yarn. It's very warm. But yeah, so those are all my works in progress. What else did I want to talk about? Yeah, and so with that, I guess that's like kind of the majority of the knitting content. I do have some other random things I'll talk about just for funsies, but if you are here just to see the knitting, then you can leave if you want. I will allow it. I don't know, no. If you're here just to see the knitting, the next stuff might not be as interesting to you. I'm gonna have a little miscellaneous bit where I talk about some yarn I've dyed and some spinning, and then acquisitions, which I said I didn't acquire any yarn, and technically that is true, but I did acquire a sweater, so I will show you that sweater, because sometimes I like to take apart, there's a word, I don't know what the word is. I have no idea. Like, I want this word. We're giving up. I also am realizing you can maybe hear my chickens. Like, it's white noise to me now because they're always making noise. but I'm really sorry if you can hear them and if it's awful. They're probably like anyways, we're gonna just move on. I'll talk about a sweater and then I'll just talk about life stuff for a very brief moment, like what's coming up in March and plans and things like that. So yeah, hang around if you want. If not, it was lovely to talk to you, and I will see you next time, maybe, if you come back. Okay, for everybody that stayed, I will talk about a few random things. So I said yarn dyeing and spinning. We'll start with the yarn dyeing, solely because I said it first. So if you follow me on Instagram, which is Nap and Knit, same name both places, you might have seen these already, but I'll show them here as well. I wanted to try snow dyeing, which is basically you prep your yarn, you lay it out, and then you put some snow on top of it, and then you put your dye on top of the snow. And the way that it melts can be kind of unique and kind of dye the yarn in different ways than you would get if you're just applying the dye directly or applying it with water or whatever it might be. So I decided to give that a try. My coffee is just like completely cold now. Like, this is sad. I decided to give it a try. I think this is the order I did them in. So you cover it in snow, you put the dye on top of the snow, you wait for it to melt, and then that's kind of your thing. Now, this was a bit of an experiment for me because, one, I've never done it before. I mean, that's why. So I decided to do 3 different things, and I think I learned a lot from the experience, specifically in terms of like how it's gonna spread and what it's gonna work like. The snow that I used was very like fluffy, like it wasn't sticky at all, so it all kind of just like spread fairly evenly. And I think that's something that I would love to try again with a snow that is a bit more clumpy, because I think that could change the way that the dye sits, because my dye felt like it was spreading pretty evenly when I put it on. Like I would put it on and it would feel like it spread to other spots really well, versus sort of like being more concentrated in one spot because that spot was a little denser in terms of snow. Either way, I think with like snow dyeing and things like that, you don't really know what you're gonna get. I think that's the fun of it. So I'm really happy with what came out of it, and I think the things that I got that are really pretty and interesting, and probably things I will never be able to create again, and that's okay. So here's my very first. This is sort of a very light purpley, bluey gray color with, you can see some big patches that have a lot darker of colors. So those were definitely areas where the dye was way more saturated. I actually think that when I finished this, it was a lot whiter, but when I steamed it, some of the yarn kind of bled and made a lot of this whiter section a lot more purpley, which I'm pretty happy about actually. So this is the first one. I think what this taught me was that I probably would need a lot more dye to get a fuller effect, because I kind of was looking for more depth of color overall, and what I didn't like about this at first was like these just huge chunks of color and then lack of color. So I'm terrible at making these little guys. There's like a recipe and I don't know it, so they always end up a little funky. But here's our first one. I think very cute. She's a sock yarn. So the second one that I did was this one. I'll show it now before I undo it so you can kind of see. And this one, both of these next ones actually were double dyes, so I dyed it one way, flipped it, and then dyed it the other. The other thing that I found was just the top layer would get so much color, and then the bottom, it just like wouldn't sink through. And so I ended up just kind of flipping them over so that the other side could be exposed, and I would re-dye using a similar-ish idea, the same colors, to kind of let it go through fully. This one I think got a lot more saturation of color overall, but you can see there's really big segments. Like this segment is basically red free, but this segment is like all red. But that's the second one. I think this turned out really cool. I don't have an unofficial name for this one. I don't know, it's just purpley. The unofficial name for this one is San Antonio Winters. My husband said dye it to be inspired by San Antonio Winters, and then I thought I would, and then I ended up just doing random colors. So we're jokingly calling it San Antonio Winters, but it's really just the colors that I felt like using. But I really like this one. I feel like it turned out very well and very fun. Very well. Very good. And then our final one is this one. And this is my favorite of them all. Sometimes it's so hard to see. I'm calling this one Wildflowers because it just feels like a field of wildflowers. This was also a dye and then turn and dye. And I just like the colors on this, the way they speckle. I feel like it's magical. So that's the final one. So I snow dyed all of these. I definitely would try it again, except I think this is we probably had our last snow of the year, I feel like. Or at the very least I'm going to be traveling, so it'll be my last snow of the year, so maybe I'll try ice dyeing or something like that instead. But those are the 3 skeins of yarn that I dyed, and I feel like it's interesting because they all have a similar character, but the colors are so different. I also spun some things, by which I mean I spun one thing. I had this fiber. I wish I could tell you more about it, but all I know is that I got it off eBay and it was fairly easy to spin. It was like a black, orange, pink, and it had some sparkly bits in it, and I spun that up using my eel wheel into, oh my gosh, I've done some kind of terrible crime because it's looped together in the middle and I don't know how. Here we go. I spun those with my eel wheel. It's a 2-ply yarn, as you can see, but it's really pretty. Like, I don't know if you can see the sparkles in it at all. It's not perfectly even, obviously, but I think I didn't do bad. Like, I think this is generally fairly even, and I would be able to knit something with it without it being like too weird or chunky. So I think it's largely a merino wool, but I honestly have no idea. So that's the first thing. Well, this is the only thing that I spun. I have some other yarn because I signed up for a Hello Yarn or Hello Fiber subscription a while back. So I do want to spin some more, but we'll see when I get around to it. And I don't really have any plans for what to use this for. I feel like it's so precious that I would want to use it for something perfect, and I don't know what that is. I also think I have a lot to learn about spinning because I just like picked colors and spun, but I think there's a lot more ways to like manipulate your spin and the colors and how it goes, like fractal plying and things like that I'd want to learn, because I don't think there's going to be any like logic to this, and that's fine, but I think that's something I could be interested in exploring in the future. So yeah, and just for comparison, I did bring the first thing I ever spun, which to be fair, this is the second thing I've ever spun, but this is the first thing I've ever spun. and it already feels so much more even. There's just so many more, I think, big chunks in here. And I think this is a merino silk blend that I got from a local-ish spinnery area. But yeah. And then, okay, so those are my sort of like miscellaneous sections. Hi, Abba. The other thing I wanted to show was my, my sweater. I have this thing that I do where when I go shopping, or when I go to the gym, there's a Goodwill right next to it. So sometimes we'll just pop in, and I always look for sweaters because, I don't know, I'm thrifty. I like the unravel. That is the word I wanted, unravel. I like to unravel things. Or I like the idea of unraveling things. That might be more accurate. So I bought this sweater with the intent of unraveling it. And he's a big boy. So this is J. Crew. It's 100% lamb's wool, and it's an extra large men's sweater. So it's pretty big. Oh, okay. Hi. Got a puppy that wants some love here. So I just figured that, like, I like red. I could probably, like, this is gonna be a decent chunk of yarn, and it's also pretty large. So it's not like unraveling a fingering weight sweater. I think this is probably more like a DK or worsted weight, which is nice because I have unraveled like a lace weight cashmere sweater before, and that was a nightmare. A soft nightmare, but still a nightmare. So it was $7.99. So to get that much yarn for $7.99 is great. It's soft. I have no idea what I will use it for or do with it because I don't really know how much of each yarn I would get, but it felt like a good investment. And worst case scenario, I figured I could wear it. Like, I would put it on, it'd be a big oversized comfy sweater. There's nothing wrong with that either. Hi baby. So yeah, that's kind of all the stuff that I had to talk about. I don't know how I managed to talk for almost a full hour, but here we are. We'll keep this last section short, just talking about March and what's next. So I think March, I really do want to finish my half and half triangles wrap. I think it is time for that to be done, and I want to be able to snuggle up under it while it's still a little bit cold. So that is definitely one of the things I want to do. I had a plan in February to finish my, to start and finish A Look at My Holes by James and Watts for my sister, because I wore mine when I was at home and she really liked it, but I didn't get around to it. So ideally I can start and finish that in March and send it to her for her birthday, but I don't actually know if that's realistic, because I do want to work on other things too. I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to put other things aside and work on it because it's her birthday and that's what I should do. So the last one that I did, I finished in truly 3 days, but I was also in quarantine in Taiwan, so different situation. But those are like two. Hi. I don't know if you can see his little paw, but he keeps hitting me. Appa is a Lab Pyrenees mix, and he just loves to hit. Like, he just likes to smack, which is hard because he's 110-ish pounds, so he can get you pretty good. But that is sort of what I'm thinking so far for March. I should probably contemplate a bit more and set some more firm plans. I guess the other big thing is the Sock Madness qualifier ends in like 2 days. So once that happens, I'm gonna have to figure out what's next and make sure I have yarn and plans to focus on that, because that obviously has more of a time limit associated than really any of these other things. But to add on to all of this, I'm going on another trip. So we are actually doing a big old road trip from Wisconsin down to Texas. And we're going to be doing some fun stuff while we're there. We're at some point going to visit New Orleans, and we're also going to be in Houston. and we're gonna visit Big Bend, the national park, as well. So there'll be a lot going on, and I think the biggest thing for me is figuring out, like, how do I pack my knitting? So that will be a little bit of what I'm figuring out in March, as well as which projects are travel capable, worthy, and will occupy enough of my time while we are there, because my husband will be working while we're there, but I won't really have any specific things to do. So I imagine I will be getting a decent chunk of knitting time in. It seems like a very good time to finish my half and half triangle wrap, and to potentially, well, I'll have to bring a bunch of sock yarns for Sock Madness, but it would be a great time also to just have a stockinette body of the halibut sweater to work on. So really the next week is going to be dedicated to getting my projects to a point where I can travel with them easily. We're obviously driving, so there will be some room, but we also have a gigantic dog and things like that to think about, you know, clothes, other important stuff. So it's all something to figure out, but we'll see. It also means that who knows what I will be showing you at the end of March. I have no idea. It's endless excitement. But yeah, I think with that I will wrap it up. I'm going to probably go read a book and finish up the bind off on my shawl. I don't know if I can do an Icelandic bind off and read at the same time. I suppose we'll find out. But I think that's how I'm gonna spend the next bit of my afternoon, maybe while I wait for this video to load onto my computer. And yeah. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me today, and definitely feel free to comment if you have any suggestions or ideas or anything you'd like to share. I will always take ideas for things to knit. I really want to do, one of the things I'm contemplating bringing is like a green yarn and a green mohair, because I've wanted to do like a mohair cardigan, or just a cardigan. I want a cardigan, but I'm getting off topic. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Feel free to comment. If you do enjoy being here, I would love if you subscribed or liked this video. But no pressure either way, and I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your week, and yeah, that's all I have. Maybe I'll pop down here. Oh, nope, I was gonna show you Appa, but off he goes. All right, bye.